During the course of my career, I've come across many different styles and strategies for negotiating contracts, and safe to say, some definitely work better than others. So let's talk a bit now about negotiation strategy. Haley, over to you first. Could you please share a bit about how you typically engage with your counterparty? Do you typically take a collaborative or more adversarial approach?
Sure. So I always recommend starting off on a positive note and a partnership-oriented approach. I think it's really important to set that tone, even though sometimes, obviously, that doesn't always endure throughout the entire negotiation. I think even if you just think about standard social approaches, when you're going up to someone and you come off really strong, they're immediately on the defensive and they're kind of concerned about anything that you're going to say or do, a little bit wary. And you definitely don't want your counterparty taking that approach if you're trying to propose reasonable points or just get your form across or whatever the case may be. So I would always recommend starting on that partnership-oriented, positive approach, collaborative approach. The other thing I would add is, don't try to always get something for everything that you give. I think this is pretty standard, but I see it all the time where that's not always the case. I try to put together kind of a list of, my must-haves and some things that we may be able to give on, maybe that are a little less risky, and try to always keep those in your back pocket or in your mind when you're going through a deal, a negotiation. I think it's important to kind of keep that handy when you're talking through points live, especially.
Yeah, that's such a great tip. And we might circle back to you in a little bit as well, Haley, about some more just tactical pieces of advice. But I love the emphasis on, starting off on a more collaborative note. And Ariana, curious to hear, what are some of your go-to strategies?
Yeah, I think that this strategy is largely helpful when you hit blockers in a deal or where the other side feels very strongly about a negotiating point. You might not understand why. So my team largely employs interest-based negotiation. And it's just a fancy word for really just listening and understanding where the other side is coming from, to understand the rationale behind their ask. So and it can take a lot of different forms. It's about understanding what the power dynamics are between the team that's negotiating against you, understanding who's the one asking for the specific request, and who is the decision maker that makes the calls, who holds the power, what's driving the ask. All of those sub questions can really help get at the why behind the ask. And ultimately, there's a few reasons to do this. One is, it goes back to creating a very positive customer experience, and this is especially important on the sales side. As negotiators, you're not the salesperson, but you still are a brand ambassador for your company. You're an extension of the sales cycle, the sales experience, and ultimately the customer experience. So it's definitely good to keep that in mind. And I think that listening and understanding goes a long way on that front. Second, it's also really a tactical approach. By demonstrating empathy, when the other side feels heard, they feel acknowledged, they feel understood, they're more likely to come to the table and compromise, even if it's just to meet you halfway and not just to give. And so I think that you can really build up a lot of rapport with your negotiating partner by doing this, so that when it comes down to making concessions, you already have a really great relationship as a foundation to make those compromises. And lastly, by listening to what is driving the ask and understanding what's behind the ask and who's behind it, you really have an opportunity to come up with some creative solutions that, to solve the problem in a different way than it's presented in the contract. And ultimately that can really unblock a lot of the issues that, might be at first seemingly insurmountable. So that's largely what I try to empower my team to do.
Yeah, that's so awesome, Ariana. Just a lot of kind of very useful, practical tips there for our audience. And I totally agree with both you and Haley, just on the importance of just building that relationship and understanding the other side. I've encountered folks just during the course of negotiations who really come in guns blazing, not really asking a lot of questions and just wanting to put their points forward. And I personally find that starting on that note actually really sours the relationship really quickly and becomes adversarial, right, before it really needs to. The best deals that I've been part of have really been when both sides are just trying to work out a path, like get the deal done as efficiently and reasonably as possible instead of trying to score points against each other.